Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 264. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys have had a good week this week. I'm still going to be laying out and explaining, the election, the aftermath of the election. Going to talk about a little bit of what Trump is doing in this transition. And then on Monday, we're going to pick up talking about Trump's transition and the team that he's putting together. And I want to lay out what's going on with some of these controversial picks that seem to be controversial. But I want to get right into today's podcast because I got a lot to share. Don't know that I'm going to be able to get to everything. I want to start with a group. This group is called Blue Victory War Room, and it says Blue Victory War Room is a project of network progress dedicated to pro-democracy community organizing, modeled on the Obama-Biden campaign playbook. So this group was doing their own postmortem. They're a Democrat group, and they were on a Zoom call. And they were talking about the results of the elections and some of the things that they were surprised about. This guy and what he says here in this Zoom call, I want to focus on to get us started because it says so much about what I've been telling you about these two different paradigms and the media bubble and the woke mind virus, but also the bubble that the mainstream media has collectively created for these people. Most of the people who supported Kamala Harris fall into this group, and they're the ones that are bewildered right now and distraught because of this loss. I think that I want to reiterate, I said this in the last podcast, but I want to reiterate it, that Kamala Harris or Joe Biden would have lost to whoever the Republican nominee was. If Ron DeSantis would have won the nomination in the GOP primary, Ron DeSantis would have defeated Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. If Nikki Haley would have won the Republican nomination, Nikki Haley would have defeated Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. So the problem isn't Trump. The problem isn't Trump at all. The problem is you, and that's what you guys need to understand. And they're not able to understand it because they're in this echo chamber, in this media bubble. But this guy says just blew my mind. Take a listen.
Talk about the importance of I could probably maybe find some more reports on this, but I mean.
I can find some more reports on this. I can maybe find some more reports on this. That's hilarious.
More reports on this, but I mean, the wrong track numbers for the economy or the way the country's going. It was like 70-30 against nobody, like on Morning Joe, they didn't talk about that.
On Morning Joe, they didn't talk about that. Wow, when I heard this, my jaw dropped. Because, if you guys have been watching this podcast, I was on this wrong track thing for 2 years. That the wrong track, it has been up to 70%. For the past 2 years, it's been up to 70%. That's why this was a change election. And I was hammering that on this podcast over and over again. This is a change election. 70% of the country believes that the country is on the wrong track. Even this poll that NBC came out with, this is in September, just at the end of September. So you have end of September, October. The election is early November. So, this was on MSNBC or on NBC, and I know that Morning Joe is on NBC. But what the point I'm making is that these people didn't realize how bad everything was in the country and how many people were dissatisfied. I mean, this guy is surprised learning after the election that the wrong track numbers were 7 in 10 Americans felt that the country was on the wrong track. These people were surprised by that because all they've been hearing from Morning Joe is how great the economy is, how great everything is. The inflation numbers are going down. We had no idea. They didn't tell us on Morning Joe that in this poll that MSNBC came out with just 4 or 5 weeks before the election, 2/3 of voters say the country is on the wrong track ahead of 2024 election. The latest national NBC poll finds 65% of voters say the country is on the wrong track for the first time since September 2002. That figure has dropped below 70%. It was 70% for like 2 years. 7 in 10 Americans saying that the country is on the wrong track under Biden and Harris. These guys didn't know it because they're locked in to the matrix, locked into the media bubble and all the lies that Morning Joe was telling him, all the lies that CNN was telling him, all the lies that ABC News was telling him, all the lies that CBS News, that we didn't know anything about the wrong track. We had no idea. We were caught off guard because we didn't know that so many Americans were dissatisfied with the direction of the country because they've been telling us on the media that everything's great. And the media plays a large blame in why these people are so bewildered and so distraught now because the media was not being honest with them. Okay. I mean, this information came out in the poll just 4 weeks before the election, 5 weeks before the election. So they had to report what they found out in this poll and they start reporting on it. But I mean, you didn't hear Kamala Harris's campaign talking about this. You didn't hear them talking about this on The View, on CNN. I mean, this is Meet the Press where Kornacki is laying all this out. And there was this article, but I mean, this guy didn't know. He didn't know how bad everything was. And he didn't know that 7 in 10 Americans were dissatisfied with the direction of the country. And again, the media, what I was getting to about the media being responsible, not only the media, the pollsters. I mean, the reason these people are so bewildered, the reason they're so in shock now is because they thought that it was close because the polls thought them. I mean, the polls before Joe Biden dropped out clearly showed that Trump was going to beat Joe Biden. That's why they forced him out because the polls showed that Trump was going to beat Joe Biden. But then when Kamala Harris became the nominee, these polls started doing weird stuff, like showing that she had made improvements, and that they were saying that it was neck and neck in some of these swing states, and really close when it never was. And if the polls were truthful, if the polls were accurate, and would have told these people, a month ago that, look, this is not close. The way that the polls showed in June when they forced Joe Biden out, that Joe Biden, you got to get out. This isn't close. We're seeing this with our internal polls. The media lying to these people and telling them it was close, that Kamala Harris had a shot up until the day of the election. They set these false expectations up for guys like this, that it was never close. 7 in 10 Americans were dissatisfied with the direction of the country under Biden Harris. How could it be close? They had no idea because they are in a media echo chamber where many Americans, many Americans have tuned out, have unplugged from the media echo chamber. So many of us knew that 7 in 10 Americans were unhappy with the direction of the country. And I told you many times on this podcast, whoever the country saw as the change agent most, that person was going to win. And it happened to be Donald Trump. But again, if it was Nikki Haley, she would have won. She would have been the change agent. If it was Ron DeSantis, he would have won. He would have been the change agent. The Democrats were going to lose because 7 in 10 Americans were unsatisfied with the direction of the country under Democrats. All right. So now all these people are going to another echo chamber because they're all mad at X because Elon controls X now, and all this information that disinformation, misinformation is being spread on X. So all these people are leaving to this other platform that's called Blue Sky. With surge in new users, Blue Sky emerges as X alternative. After the election, they've had with 1 million new accounts added since the U.S. election. This is a new social media app called Blue Sky, and it's basically a echo chamber. So instead of staying on X and engaging with Trump voters and people that are dissatisfied with the direction of the country, instead of engaging with your neighbors and your family and going to Thanksgiving dinner with your family members that voted for Trump, talking to them, figuring out why they voted for Trump, having a intellectual debate on the battlefield of ideas. No, that's not what these people are doing. They're retreating into echo chambers, into their blue little safe spaces now, where they can all say what they all believe and encourage each other and lick their wounds. And this is only going to accentuate the woke mind virus. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything to help these people electorally either. And again, I don't see these people making any changes. I don't see them learning any of the lessons from this election. I see them going down the exact same path, doing the exact same things, and more defiant as well. So we will see what happens. But I've been explaining to you that in this podcast, that what is happening is a populist movement. That explains the realignment of the parties. That explains the election of Donald Trump. That explains not only what's going on here in the United States, but what's going on globally with Brexit, with all of the seats that Macron lost in France in their last parliamentary elections. It explains so much of what's going on around the world. And I've been explaining to you that all of this started, these populist movements started after the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, in Obama's first year. The very first here in the United States populist movement to start during that transition, as Bush is going out, as Obama is coming in, was the Tea Party. And I've explained to you that the Tea Party was a response to the debt, to the deficit, to the bailout, the bank bailout that had happened, to all of the wars, the foreign wars, the Iraq war, all the money that we were wasting in Afghanistan. It was all part of this Tea Party movement. And there was a Tea Party caucus first in the House of Representatives. This is very important because I was explaining this to you in the last podcast. This became a conservative caucus in the House of Representatives called the Tea Party caucus, because as I was explaining to you, that what the Tea Party did is they didn't react to Obama winning the election in 2009 as the way that Democrats are reacting to Donald Trump being elected when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, or Donald Trump's recent election. What you got to understand about Donald Trump being elected in 2016 is that the Democratic Party was already experiencing major problems within their party in 2016. That's why they had their own populist movement that started in 2011 with the Occupy movement that branched into the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2015. So the Democratic Party was already experiencing trouble in their party and holding their coalition together, the Obama coalition. They were in 2016, 15, 16, they were already experiencing these problems. When Trump won in 2016, the Democrats, again, they did not look internally and say, how did Trump get elected? What's wrong with us? Why is Trump, Bernie Sanders able to draw these huge crowds all across the country? And what's going on with our party? What reforms can we make internally in our party to make our party more appealing? They didn't do any of that after the 2016 election. They blamed Russia, that Russia was responsible for Donald Trump winning. And if it wasn't for Russia, then Donald Trump would have won. If it wasn't for WikiLeaks, then Donald Trump wouldn't have won. The only reason that Hillary Clinton lost is because of Russia and James Comey. If James Comey wouldn't have reopened the case in the Clinton weeks before the election, she would have won. It wasn't us. It wasn't our platform. It wasn't, these internal problems going on in the party. It was James Comey. It was Russia, and she won the popular vote. We can always, take solace in the fact that she won the popular vote. So she won the popular vote. So more Americans like our agenda than liked his agenda. And if it wasn't for James Comey and if it wasn't for Russia, she would have won. We don't need to do any internal forensic analysis about why we lost. We lost because of Russia. We lost because of James Comey, and she won the popular vote. That's the way Democrats reacted to Trump winning in 2016. But there was major problems within the Democratic Party that should have been addressed when Donald Trump won in 2016. Again, when Donald Trump won in 2016, any Republican that won the nomination that year was going to beat Hillary Clinton. Any Republican that won the nomination that year. If Ted Cruz would have been the nominee in 2016, he would have beat Hillary Clinton because the Democratic Party is the problem. It's not Trump. It's not Trump. And so the Republican Party, after Obama won in 2009, handled things differently. They didn't start attacking the Obama administration and the Democrats. The very first thing these people did is start looking internally. How can we reform the Republican Party from within? And that's what they did. So they created the Tea Party caucus in the House of Representatives. And the Tea Party caucus was all of these Tea Party members of the House of Representatives that had primaried these neocon conservatives that had been there since the Bush administration. And they come into Congress as these Tea Party members of Congress. So you start with and I told you how Ron Paul was, because he ran in 2008 and in 2012. He was the one articulating all of the principles of the of the Republican Party, or the Tea Party. Sorry. He's the one who started articulating all the principles of the Tea Party from within the Republican Party. And he ran in 2008 and 2012. He had been in Congress for a long time. And so he was the philosophical leader of it. So this Tea Party caucus, it came from Ron Paul's son, is the one who got the idea to create the caucus. The idea of the Tea Party caucus originated with Rand Paul when he was campaigning for the census. So there's no longer a Tea Party caucus anymore. The Tea Party caucus has become the Freedom Caucus. It says right here, the caucus was reconstituted in the 114th Congress in January 2015. And what's his name? Scamp, Tim Holscamp, or Hill Scamp. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. of Kansas became the chair of the caucus in February 2015. Helskamp lost party primary election in 2016, and since then the caucus has remained inactive, with no official announcement of its dissolution. Most Tea Party caucus members have joined the far right, is what it says, far right Freedom Caucus. So the Freedom Caucus, the Tea Party caucus became the Freedom Caucus. Although the Tea Party is not a party in the classic sense of the word, research has shown that the members of the Tea Party caucus voted like a third party in Congress. Okay. A largely right-wing populist faction of the Republican Party, the Tea Party. The Tea Party caucus promotes tax cuts, non-defense spending, adherence to the movement's interpretations of the Constitution. The caucus members have also advocated socially conservative legislation supported by the right to bear arms, limited government. So the Freedom Caucus is a caucus that is currently active. It's one of the most powerful caucuses in the House of Representatives. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, it comes from the Freedom Caucus. And the Freedom Caucus came out. So that's why I'm explaining all this. So you have to know, because the Freedom Caucus is relevant today. So you have to understand where the Freedom Caucus came from. And the Freedom Caucus is the reason that Mike McCarthy was thrown out for Mike Johnson, and Matt Gaetz was part of the Freedom Caucus. You can't understand anything going on unless you understand first the Tea Party caucus and how the Tea Party caucus evolved into the Freedom Caucus. All right, read a little bit of this. The Freedom Caucus, also known as the House Freedom Caucus, is a congressional caucus consisting of Republican members from the United States House of Representatives, is generally considered the most conservative and furthest right bloc within the chamber. The caucus was formed in January 2015, and if you notice, the Tea Party caucus ended in 2015 by the group of conservatives and Tea Party movement members. So the Freedom Caucus came out from the Tea Party members with an aim on pushing Republican leadership right. Its first chairman was Jim Jordan. Described the caucus as a smaller, more cohesive, more agile, and more active group of conservative representatives. Its current chairman is Andy Harris. Is considered to be far right politician due to radical proposals. Members of the Freedom Caucus are typically considered part of MAGA movement and loyalists to Donald Trump. So the Freedom Caucus came from the Tea Party. As I'm trying to explain to you where Donald Trump came from. Trying to explain to you how we got to where we are, and this is important to understand. So again, the Tea Party movement started as a response to the Bush administration and the Obama administration. The policies were outlined and the principles were outlined, most importantly by Ron Paul, but there were others. The Tea Party caucus became the Freedom Caucus, which is, I would say, one of the most powerful caucuses in the House of Representatives right now. All right, so we talked again on the last podcast about the Occupy movement and how the Occupy movement was the left-wing populist movement that started in response to the financial crisis in 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, the mortgage crisis, the bailout, and it started in Manhattan with Occupy Wall Street. Started in 2011. I was explaining to you in the last podcast how Obama, when he ran in 2008, ran as a populist. Wall Street versus Main Street. We're going to go after the people that brought us to this crisis and that caused the Great Recession. We're going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up. And all of this populist rhetoric that Barack Obama ran on in 2008. He didn't do any of that stuff. So these progressive left-wing populists, they started to organize around 2011. Obama runs for re-election in 2012. While this protest is still going on, he uses his DHS and his FBI to shut down this protest, so you have to deal with it while he's running for re-election. He ends up winning re-election, but these people start looking for their champion who's going to champion the progressive causes, and who are we going to support for president in 2016? And that person ends up being Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders comes on the scene, grabs the reins of this left-wing populist movement. And, he's drawing huge crowds. The people want to know what happened to the working class, and how this political realignment happened is that all of the working class Democrats, people that have been traditionally union members, people whose family have voted Democrats going back to FDR, these blue collar, anti-war Democrats, these people that were against free trade and against globalism, and it had more protectionist economic policies, but were Democrats. All of these Democrats in 2016, they were going to the Bernie rally. They were supporting Bernie Sanders. So the traditional Democrats, talking about the political realignment and how this realignment happened, the traditional Democrats, these hippie no-war Democrats that were protesting the draft in the early 70s against Nixon, all those Democrats, they were at the Bernie Sanders rally. They were supporting Bernie Sanders in 2016, not Hillary Clinton. And then when Hillary Clinton, when they ended up cheating Bernie Sanders, using the superdelegates, disenfranchising him, the information that came out in WikiLeaks that the chair of the Democratic Party, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was rigging the primary for Hillary Clinton, is what came out in the WikiLeaks, and trying to use his Jewish religion against him and all that stuff, that angered all of his supporters. When this guy endorses Hillary Clinton after that, after what they had done to him, it was a huge miscalculation. It basically watered down his entire movement, everything that he had been talking about, everything that he had been running on. How can you tell us that Hillary Clinton is in Wall Street and she's a neoliberal establishment candidate? How can you tell us, after running this campaign, leading us, going back from the Occupy Wall Street movement, how can you claim that Hillary Clinton is this Wall Street candidate that took all this money for speeches with Goldman Sachs and all this stuff, that she represents the establishment? How can you tell us, Bernie Sanders, to go vote for her after that? Well, Bernie Sanders, after this most recent election, he put out this statement that got a lot of criticism. It created this back and forth with he and Nancy Pelosi, because he puts out this statement after Trump won last week, where he is laying into the Democratic Party and telling the Democratic Party that you guys have betrayed the working class. You guys have let the working class down. And let's read some of this stuff. Sanders' statement on the results of the 2024 election. I don't have time to read all of this because I have a lot to get to, you guys. It'll come to no surprise that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class people who would find that the working class has abandoned them. That it would come at no surprise, no great surprise, that the Democratic Party, which has abandoned working class people, would find that working class people has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now the Latino and black workers as well. Well, listen to this. First, it was the white working class that were at my rallies in 2016 that were supporting me. First it was the white working class. Now it's the elite, the Latino and black working class as well. While the Democratic Party leadership defends the status quo, you told your voters to vote for the status quo. You endorsed the status quo, bro. What are you talking about? You endorsed the status quo after you had been cheated, after your voters and your supporters were disenfranchised. You endorsed the status quo. And now after this election, Democratic leadership defends the status quo. Bro, you endorsed the status quo. You endorsed it. The American people are very angry and want change. They wanted change back in 2016. And they are right. Once you listen to this clip, this is from Fox News, and they're going over this statement that Bernie Sanders put out after the most recent election. Take a listen.
One of the first people to speak up and say we need to have a reckoning about what our party represents was Bernie Sanders, Democratic socialist, presidential candidate pushed aside by the Democrats multiple times. He came out on X on Wednesday, right after the election, talking about the working class, and he's gotten some blowback on that statement. So here's what Bernie Sanders said on Wednesday after Kamala Harris was thumped. He wrote, "It should come as no great surprise that a Democrat Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and black workers as well. While the Democrat leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right." A lot of Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, taking some issue with this.
That's right. Here's what she said after.
Here, I want to, because in this clip, they don't play all of Nancy Pelosi's comments. I want you to listen to what Nancy Pelosi says to Bernie Sanders in response.
Bernie Sanders has not won. Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families. That's where we are.
Why did voters who earned less than 100,000 K go for Trump in such large numbers?
Well, there are cultural issues involved in elections as well. Guns, God, and gays. That's the way they say it.
Guns, gods, and gays. Guns. So Nancy Pelosi is saying Bernie Sanders is wrong when he says that we've abandoned the working class. She's establishment, neo-conservative, neo-liberal Democrat. She became Speaker of the House in 2007. January 2007, she became Speaker of the House. She's been in Congress forever. She just filed paperwork to run for re-election in 2026. She's 85 years old. She says Bernie Sanders is wrong. We haven't abandoned the working class, and Bernie Sanders hasn't won anything. He hasn't won anything. And so then the lady asked, so why did all these working class people that make under $100,000 that traditionally have been blue collar Democrats, why did they vote for Trump this time? And she says, guns, God, and gays is what she says. Guns, God, and gays is why.
Class families, that's where we are.
Why did voters who earned less than 100,000 K go for Trump in such large numbers?
Well, there are cultural issues involved in elections as well. Guns, God, and gays. That's the way they say it. Guns, that's an issue. Gays, that's an issue. Now they're making the trans issue such an important issue in their priorities. And in certain communities, what they call God, what we call a woman's right to choose.
Wow. Wow, man. So I'm blown away by what Nancy Pelosi says, but I mean, of course she's going to say that because she wants to hold on to power. The power is her precious. She wants to hold on to her precious power. That's why she doesn't want to come to grips with what Bernie Sanders is saying. And honestly, Bernie Sanders endorsed it. He endorsed it. So, I mean, he has no legs to stand on either now that you're seeing what's happening, that these left-wing populists that were his supporters in 2016 are voting for Trump now. He understands that now, but he endorsed it. He endorsed the establishment. He endorsed Hillary Clinton. He endorsed Joe Biden as well. Take a listen to what he says here.
Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests
Absolutely
and
not.
fighting for you?
Absolutely
I think
not.
The overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Senator, let me zoom out and just ask you about these results. You've heard some of the reaction throughout the Democratic Party. How much do you personally blame President Biden for this loss?
President Biden, when he came into office, said that he would be the most progressive president since FDR. And I think on domestic issues, not foreign policy, on domestic issues, he has kept his word and the agenda that he has.
So on domestic issues, he has kept his words. I mean, which is it, Bernie Sanders? Which is it? 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 I don't understand where you're coming. This guy right here is probably the biggest con man. This guy's probably a bigger con man than Obama himself. I'm sorry. Bernie Sanders is a con man. Do you hear what he just said? He wrote this statement after the election. Oh, the Democratic Party shouldn't be surprised that the working class people have abandoned you. You abandoned them. You abandoned them. And now it was the white working class. Now it's the Latinos and the blacks. You abandoned them. You abandoned them. And then asked about Joe Biden and his administration his last 4 years. He says, he did a great job. The domestic policy, the best since FDR. Which is it, Bernie Sanders?
Nancy's a friend of mine, and we've worked together to raise the minimum wage to join unions, so that we can extend the special interest and fighting for you. I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Senator, let me zoom out and just ask you about these results. You've heard some of the reaction throughout the Democratic Party. How much do you personally blame President Biden for this loss?
President Biden, when he came into office, said that he would be the most progressive president since FDR. And I think on domestic issues, not foreign policy, on domestic issues, he has kept his word.
Wow. On domestic issues, he has kept his word since FDR. So Bernie Sanders, this is after he wrote that statement that the Democratic Party had abandoned the working class. He has no consistency at all. And it is no wonder that his movement, this progressive movement that started with the Occupy movement that he rose up to lead in 2015. It's no wonder that this movement, it was not successful. It's no wonder that it dissolved. And it's no wonder that many of these people are voting for Trump in this election and for right-wing populists. Because as Crystal Ball says in the clip that I played in the last podcast, these people would rather have right-wing. And now once you understand right-wing populism, it's better than left-wing populism. So these people start to understand, what right-wing populism actually means, and philosophically, and the ideas of right-wing populism are just better than left-wing populism. So these people are now supporting Donald Trump. These were your Bernie bros because Bernie was not consistent. Bernie was not. He was not consistent, and he has not been consistent at all. This was Bernie Sanders in 2015 when he was getting ready to run for president, talking about his opinion about immigration and open borders. He did a complete reversal on what he says here.
What you said about being a democratic socialist is a more international view. But I think if you take global poverty that seriously, it leads you to conclusions that in the U.S. are considered out of political bounds. Things like sharply raising the level of immigration we permit, even up to a level of open borders, about sharply increasing the amount of foreign aid. Open borders.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of the global poor richer, wouldn't it?
So you want to know how there is a political realignment and where the political realignment came from. Listen to what Bernie Sanders is saying here. That the open borders, the unfeathered immigration and migration, that's a Koch brothers proposal. That's a right-wing proposal. I do not support that, is what Bernie Sanders said in 2015. And he supports it. Now he's voted for it several times. He supports it now. And the right wing, the MAGA movement doesn't support it. The MAGA movement wants to shut it down. That's what's called a realignment. That's what's called a realignment, because Bernie Sanders has totally realigned the way that he thinks about immigration now.
Of open borders, about sharply increasing
open borders.
Foreign aid.
Open borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal. The idea, of course, I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe in a nation state, or in a country called the United States, or UK, or Denmark, or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people. What right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that. I think you didn't believe in that back in 2015, but you believe in it now. You believe in it now. So this is some video about to hammer this just a little bit more, just have a few more clips on this, and I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about how Ron Paul handled what happened to him and the Republican Party, trying to box him out, and the Tea Party movement, the movement that he was leading in 2008 and 2012, and how Ron Paul handled things different from Bernie Sanders. But I just want you to know this was at the convention in Philadelphia in 2016, after they used the superdelegates to rig the primary for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, let me just explain this to you. Hillary Clinton, that is part of the Bush-Clinton dynasty, was a clear extension of the Bush-Clinton dynasty. She's married to Bill Clinton, and it was in 2008 was a change election again. That's why Obama ran on change. That's why change was a major part of his platform. Obama comes out of nowhere. He'd only been in the United States Senate for 2 years, fresh beyond the ears. Nobody knew who this guy was. Nobody knew anything about him. And that's what was appealing about him, because he represented change and he came out of nowhere. And the electorate said, the Democratic electorate in the primary in 2008 said, this is Democrats. Democrats saying, we prefer Obama over Hillary Clinton. We want to go in a different direction. We don't want the same old tired Bush-Clinton politics. So we'll take this 2-term United States senator who's young. We don't know who he is. He's got a funny name, and we don't know anything about this guy. But this is Democrats. We'd rather have him than Hillary Clinton. Why would you think Hillary Clinton 4 years later would be more appealing to Democrats? But they rigged the primary in 2016. With the superdelegates, other things that we learned from WikiLeaks that the DNC was doing to rig the election. That's why Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the head of the DNC, had to resign right before the convention. And then they pushed through her nomination. And then all of Bernie Sanders' supporters, all of these people that had been part of this populist movement going back to Occupy Wall Street, people that had signed up for delegates to be delegates for Bernie Sanders, people that were part of this left-wing populist movement that he was leading in that 2016 election, they walk out of the convention in protest. I just want you to look at some of this video.
Hillary and Bush, he never wanted it. Gone. I've been told that there's a walkout going on among a lot of delegates walking out and going over to talk to the media. Tell me about that.
There were several hundred people that walked through the aisles, through the halls. They're leaving outside of the convention to do a silent protest. Many Bernie Sanders supporters are extremely upset about the recent WikiLeaks and the concerns about cheating in the primaries, issues with whether or not we had open primaries, whether independent voters were allowed to vote in certain states. And so it's been a frustrating experience.
Very frustrating. So these people were pissed. And Bernie Sanders turning around and endorsing Hillary Clinton after that was a slap in the face for these people. It was an absolute slap in the face. This was 2016. This is outside of the convention, that same convention there in Philadelphia, Bernie Sanders supporters saying that after Bernie Sanders endorsed Hillary Clinton, they're going to be voting for Trump. That's what they said. A lot of them. This is 2016.
Today we're in Philadelphia at the DNC talking to angry Bernie protesters about whether or not they're going to be voting for Hillary in November or switching parties to vote for Donald Trump. Let's see what they have to say.
I was strong for Bernie, and now I'm taking the stand for Trump.
Okay. I'm going to use all of my time and energy to make sure Hillary doesn't win after the convention.
So in a swing state, you consider Trump?
Yes.
And do you think other Bernie supporters in swing states will consider voting for Trump to deny Hillary office?
I know they will. I know a lot of them, and they already said they will.
Had to vote for a Trump or Hillary, I'd pick Trump.
You say that you would possibly consider voting for Trump if the race were close. Do you think other Bernie supporters would do that?
Absolutely. You guys need to know.
It wouldn't be surprising to you to see a big chunk of the Bernie people go to Trump?
No. No, it wouldn't. And I have many intelligent peers within this movement who have said the same thing.
Some people that maybe Bernie is the person that they stuck with right now, but there are some things just anti-establishment, and they'll go with Trump to send that message.
I've posted on it on my social media, and quite a few people are going to go with Trump. Some people are sheep, and they're going to fall in line and vote for Hillary.
As I spend time talking to Trump supporters, we agree on a lot of major issues that we're facing in this country. We're both mad about the same things.
Do you think other people you are going to go to Trump?
We're both mad about the same things.
I've heard that a lot of people are saying, they're saying to me, man, thank you for saying what I can't say yet.
I'm done with the Democratic Party.
So you've left the Democrat Party. Do you think that a lot of other
This is in 2016. I'm done with the Democratic Party. And you guys want to understand what just happened in 2024? 8 years later? I'm done with the Democratic Party, is what this guy says. You think he's the only one? You want to understand what happened? Trying to explain to you what happened, people. And Bernie Sanders slapped these people in the face. He turned these people to Trump when he bent the knee to the Democratic establishment to endorse first Hillary Clinton, and then in 2020, when he ran again in 2020, Bernie Sanders, these people started supporting him again. He ends up winning the Iowa caucuses. So he's the first, Bernie Sanders in 2020 was the first person, he wins the very first primary caucus. So he starts off, and he hits the ground running in 2020, 4 years later after 2016. 4 years later, hits the ground running, winning the Iowa caucus. And he goes to New Hampshire. He wins New Hampshire after that. This guy hits the ground running. We're going to make this happen in 2020. They robbed us in 2016. They didn't let us get the nomination in 2016. But in 2020, we're dealing with COVID. We still got all the issues and problems that we had in 2016. Working class problems, income inequality, still leading this movement in 2020. Starts up, hits ground running, winning Iowa caucuses, winning New Hampshire. They go to South Carolina. Obama gets on the phone with Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and all these other Democrats that were in the race, and they were basically taking the vote away from Joe Biden, and that was, paving the way for Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders would have won South Carolina, it was going to be hard to stop him in 2020. Obama gets on the phone with Pete Buttigieg and with Amy Klobuchar and with the other Democrats that he had influence with, and get them to drop out of the race right before South Carolina. James Clownburn endorses Joe Biden. Joe Biden ends up winning South Carolina. The rest is history. He ends up going on and winning the nomination. This guy endorses Joe Biden. Ooh, he endorses Joe Biden. So he's leading this anti-establishment populist movement. The populist establishment power is fighting his movement, not allowing him to have any success. And then he turns around and he endorses them. In 2016, Hillary Clinton, and then in 2020 endorsed Joe Biden. What does that do to your movement? What does that do to your movement? Well, Ron Paul handled things very differently. In 2012, people start falling off. Ron Paul actually comes in, I think, third place in the Iowa caucuses in the Republican primary in 2012. And then he stays in. He's one of the last candidates to drop out. I think he stays in until the end. And it was clear that Romney was going to, win the nomination, even though it was out of Ron Paul's hands. He still stays in the race, even though Romney was already the presumptive nominee. And that angered Romney a lot, because it's like, why is this guy staying in? And the reason that Ron Paul was staying in, because he just wanted to keep campaigning. He just wanted to get his message out, his message about liberty, his message about small government, his message about all the philosophical things that he was, giving to the Tea Party, the voice that he was giving to the Tea Party. He just wanted to get his message out, so he wanted to keep campaigning. But that angered Romney. When it was finally over, Romney he needed Ron Paul's endorsement. He needed Ron Paul's endorsement. Same way Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, they needed Bernie Sanders' endorsement. Hillary Clinton needed Bernie Sanders' endorsement, even though she lost anyway. But she needed Bernie Sanders' endorsement so she could unify the party. You can't unify the party unless, you get all of their supporters. And Romney needed Ron Paul's supporters. Let me read you a little bit of this article. In an interview with New York Times, Ron Paul details the ask of GOP officials to return to the convention for a speaking slot, and he explained why he declined. So they'd already told him that no, you can't do a speaking spot. And then when they saw that that we're going to need Ron Paul supporters. I mean, if we don't get Ron Paul supporters, then we're going to lose. So they call Ron Paul back and say, will you come to the convention and speak? We want you to do a speaking slot. Mr. Paul, in an interview, said convention planners offered him an opportunity to speak under two conditions: that he deliver remarks vetted by Romney, by the Romney campaign, and that he give a full-fledged endorsement of Mr. Romney. He declined. Ron Paul says, I'm not doing what Bernie Sanders did. I'm not going to cave under the establishment after I've been leading this populist movement against the establishment. No, I'm not going to do that, is what Ron Paul says. Ron Paul, quote, it wouldn't be my speech. That if my speech is vetted by the Romney campaign and they're telling me what I can say, that's not my speech. No, you can keep that. I'm not going to endorse you. Mr. Paul said, that would undo everything that I've done in the last 30 years. If I allow you to do this to me, Romney, if I allow you to vet my speech, if I allow you to edit out my message, that would undo everything that I've done for the last 30 years. I do not fully endorse Romney for president. So you see how Ron Paul handled things very differently than Bernie Sanders. And when Bernie Sanders endorses the establishment after running against the establishment, that diffuses his movement. Ron Paul's movement, the Tea Party movement, the movement that he was leading, I mean, These people were ready for Trump when he came on the scene 3 years later in 2015. They were ready. They were ready for him. It is completely different in the way that was handled. So now back to Rand Paul and his Halloween costume in 2008, our $10 trillion debt in 2008, 16 years ago. Now we just tripped over the $36 trillion mark. So we're $36 trillion in debt, and we're on our way to $37 trillion in debt, which brings up DOGE. DOGE is a new government department that Donald Trump is creating, and that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are heading. This is the statement he put out. I'm pleased to announce that the great Elon Musk, working in conjunction with the American patriot Vivek Ramaswamy, would lead the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. And DOGE is also the name of Elon Musk has a crypto coin called DOGE. This is all about slashing government, slashing the budget, getting back to fiscal responsibility, getting back to balanced budgets, passing budgets, stopping the continuing resolutions, stopping the omnibus bills, finding the waste, the fraud, and the abuse in government, and cutting down government so we can have an impact on cutting this debt. That's the whole objective of this new program that Donald Trump is putting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in charge of. It will become potentially the Manhattan Project of our time, tackling this debt. It will become potentially the Manhattan Project of our time. This is a clip from Jesse Waters' show the other night talking about this new DOGE program.
Elon Musk and Vivek are running the Department of Government Efficiency. They're calling it DOGE, and they'll have plenty to do. Starting with the pork. The Fed spent $500,000 on a study to see if selfies make you happy.
$500,000. $500,000 to find out if selfies make you happy is what the government spent.
$1 million on a study to see if selfies make you happy. $1 million went to study if Japanese quail were more frisky if you gave them cocaine. The Fed spent $20,000 on drag shows in Ecuador. $80,000 in Ghana asking taxi drivers if climate change makes it harder for them to drive. And $500,000 was spent so Fauci could create transgender monkeys. But it's not just waste. There's 3 million federal employees, and a lot of them don't even do much more than collect a paycheck. Most government workers in D.C. are still working from home. COVID's been over for 3 years. But worst of all, $500 billion a year stolen by fraudsters. We lose $500 billion of your money to fraud each year.
$500 billion lost to fraud each year. And the funny thing about this is that a lot of Democrats are complaining about this new agency or new department. It's not an agency, but it's a department that they're creating. And that they're going to attempt to cut our debt and to balance our budgets and to have fiscal responsibility. A lot of Democrats are explaining, why do you think that all these Democrats are upset about this? Because where do you think this fraud's going?
But worst of all, $500 billion a year stolen by fraudsters. We lose $500 billion of your money to fraud.
So if I'm hearing people getting upset and complaining about this new department that's going to look for this fraud and root it out, if you're complaining about it, it may be because you're benefiting from it. It may be because you are benefiting from it. They were talking about this on CNN the other night, and they started talking about cutting the military. Is the military going to be part of these cuts? And there are people on here like Kara Swisher and other Democrats saying, oh, no, we can't cut the military. You can't cut. So these are Democrats saying we can't cut military spending. I just think that is hilarious. But this is Nicole Hannah Jones. She's the the black woman from the New York Times that created the 1619 Project. She's on this panel on CNN. I want you to listen to what she says, why we can't cut the budget and have fiscal responsibility.
Bailout out by the government? I mean, I just think there's a fundamental difference between running a company and running government, right? Companies exist to make profit. Government exists to serve people and to work in a common good. So I think putting two businessmen who have relied on government subsidies over what ultimately is going to be a purge of thousands and hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs.
All around the country.
Middle-class jobs that are disproportionately held by Black Americans, by the way, because working for the federal government is a way that they can mitigate discrimination. There's studies on this, right? That this is going to have a real economic impact.
So listen to what this woman is saying, that these jobs should exist, that you can't cut out inefficiency and make government more efficient because these jobs are a program to help marginalized communities, Black and brown people who work for the government have income equality or whatever she says here. That because Black and brown people have these jobs, you can't cut these jobs and make the government more efficient. That the government is not like a business. The government serves people, and part of serving people is having this phony job that we don't need just so we can give this person a paycheck, is essentially what she's saying. We're going to listen to it one more time just to make sure that I'm clear on what she's saying.
Thousands and hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs who have relied on government subsidies. Government exists to serve people. And,
government exists to serve people. So part of serving people is to create jobs where we can pay these people a paycheck, even though their job is not necessary and it is not efficient.
Common good. So I think putting two businessmen who have relied on government subsidies over what ultimately is going to be a purge of thousands and hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs.
All around the country.
Middle-class jobs that are disproportionately held by Black Americans, by the way, because working for the federal government is a way that they can mitigate discrimination. There's studies on this, right? That this is going to have a real economic impact. So, sure.
Yes, it's going to have a real economic impact. That's the purpose, you dingbat. That's the purpose, is so it can have a real economic impact. What's wrong with you people? But I have a few more. I just want to show you. So look who pops up to also criticize this. He was on Fox the other day, and we have a few more minutes. I want to show you this.
Yes. How much do you think we can rip out of this wasted $6.5 trillion Harris-Biden budget?
Well, I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
Yes.
$2 trillion.
What do you think about that, Larry?
So look who's here. Look who this is. Who's this, guys? This is Larry Summers. Who's Larry Summers? I've been talking to you guys for weeks about Larry Summers. This guy, Larry Summers. Larry Summers was Treasury Secretary in the last year of the Clinton administration when this document, the secret document that complained within the Clinton administration that the United States was going to be completely debt-free in 10 years, and that they identified it as a crisis, that the United States was going to be completely debt-free in 10 years. And Larry Summers was Treasury Secretary when that secret document was written, identifying the United States being completely debt-free as a crisis. Larry Summers. He was Treasury Secretary. So you got to understand, when Trump is talking about tackling debt and putting this department together with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, we haven't even had a discussion about if debt is good or not. Because these people, Larry Summers, Alan Greenspan, remember he says that the United States can pay any debt because we can continue to print more money. These people philosophically don't agree that debt is bad. These people believe in something called modern monetary theory, and these people think debt is good. They want debt. They want debt. That's why they had a secret document that they were circulating in the Clinton administration, complaining and identifying as a crisis that the United States was going to be completely debt free. They want debt. So now that Donald Trump is putting together a department that is going to start looking at waste, fraud, and abuse and tackling the debt, Larry Summers is here and he's saying, no, it can't be done. It can't be done. Larry Summers, take a listen.
Respectfully, I think it's idiotic. Okay. It's not a serious statement. Where are they going to cut it out? If these people think it's like some business, but here's the problem. Only 15% of the federal budget is for payroll. So even if you took all the employees, every single person who works for the federal government out, you couldn't save anything like $2 trillion. Maybe what they're saying is that they plan to cut Social Security benefits. Maybe what they're saying is that they plan to scale back Medicare.
Well, we know
Very simple question.
I can't stand this guy. Because it doesn't matter. I mean, can we even look at it? You're saying we can't even look at it, Larry Summers? That we can't even look at a way to streamline government, make government more efficient, to balance our budgets, to have fiscal. He's saying it's impossible. We can't even do this, is what he's saying. Last couple of things I want to show you that Ron Paul, who started all this has been his life's work. He's going to be also part of this DOGE program. Elon Musk tweeted out, it would be great to have Ron Paul as part of the Department of Government Efficiency. Ron Paul retweets it. I'd be happy to talk to you about it, Elon. And then Elon tweeted this meme out from Office Space. Remember, these are the Bobs. These are headhunters that come into Office Space. If you haven't seen the movie, to make the company more efficient. They're going to fire people. And it's Ron Paul with Elon Musk. What would you say you do here? So it's come full circle. Ron Paul is going to be a part of it as well. And that's his life work, cutting government spending, getting back to balanced budgets, auditing the Fed. You people know that the day before 9/11, that the Secretary of Defense, Don Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, said that the Department of Defense couldn't track $2 trillion in transaction. And you're telling me that we can't go through with the microscope and find out where this waste, fraud, and abuse is going from? People, it's either you don't want to, or you don't think it's a good idea to cut this debt. But if you think it's a good idea, then we need to get in there and do it. I'll be back on, what's today, Monday or Friday? I'll be back on Monday. We're going to break down Trump's cabinet picks. You guys have a good weekend. See you on Monday.
Thank you.